Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kia ora, councillors, and kia ora to our visitors for today as well. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kia uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ehi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei Māori ora.
Thank you. And just opening the meeting, I note for the record that we have myself, Noel Smith, chair today. Robbie is an apology. Ben Dunbar-Smith, Michael Downer and Warren Ma, Bruce Clarkson. Online we have Clyde Graft. Nice to see you, Clyde. Tipper. And we have apologies from Pamela, Robbie Cookson, and anyone else? I haven't got anything for lateness, so I'll move the apologies be accepted. Thank you, McCall. All in favour? Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to add anything or change the order for any reason? No. So Ben moves, seconded Warren, that the order is confirmed. All in favour? Against? Carried. Disclosures of interest. Any disclosures that are not known? Thank you. We'll move forward. Preliminary items, health and safety statement. I think, can we have that read? Because we've got people in the room that may not have been here before. Thank you.
No problem at all. Marina Tato, welcome to the Waikato Regional Council, those of you who haven't been here before. In the event of an emergency, if the fire alarm should sound, the exit is through the main chamber door and out to the right onto the footpath. We'll then cross the road at the crossing and assemble in the park. Should anything else occur that requires attention, please follow the directions of staff, and we hope that you have a good day.
Thank you. The next item is the confirmation receipt of the previous minutes. Are there any matters arising from those? No matters arising. Thank you. Ben, second. Thank you. All in favour? Carried. All right, so let's move to the main business of the day, an update on projects funded through the Natural Heritage Partnership Program. And at this stage, I'd just like to welcome everyone who has come to present. We're looking forward to hearing what you've been up to, certainly with the use of public money, but also the benefit to the wider environment. So I'll now ask Greg to lead us through how this is going to happen.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. So we have a number of groups who will come along today to present to the committee about the work that they are doing on the community's behalf. So it is an exciting day for us, particularly focusing on community-led restoration in the environment. So our work is each group will have a 25-minute slot. Of that, we'll have a 10-minute presentation, and then with the remainder, an opportunity for discussion around the committee table. And we do have a morning tea scheduled for 11 o'clock and also a lunch at the end of the session. Over and above the folk who will be presenting to you in face-to-face today, we also have a video at the end to cover off a few other groups. So I'll just go through, I'll introduce each group as we run through.
All right. The first group, Mangatatari Ecological Island Trust.
Yeah. So I'd like to welcome Helen and Dan. So Helen Hughes is the CEO of Mangatatari Ecological Island Trust, and Dan Howie, Operations Manager. So obviously we have a long-standing relationship with Mangatatari, and so really looking forward to an update from them around where they've come from and where they're heading.
We'll just make sure that they are close enough to us.
Yeah, we grab the other one as well if you like and have one each.
Absolutely.
And then pull it right towards you. You bring it close. You can bend it down.
All good. So first of all, thank you everyone for allowing us to come and present today. Hopefully up there is a slide pack somewhere. All good. So Sanctuary Mountain Mangatatari, for those of you who don't know us, we are We're claiming the world's largest fully fenced pest-proof eco-sanctuary. We are situated between Hamilton and Taupo, kind of right in the smack between, I like to say, Hobbiton and Waitomo. And we are 3,363 hectares of old growth native. So if you want to just flick to the next slide. We've been operating, go to the next one after that. We've been operating since 2001. In 1917, the top of the Wonga was designated a reserve. Towards the end of the 1990s, David Wallace, who is our kind of maverick founder, if you like, got together with a bunch of landowners and we fenced the sanctuary. We've got about 47 kilometres of pest-proof fence around the sanctuary. We are home to some of the most endangered species in the country, and we're a stronghold for the North Island Western brown kiwi. We say we've got around 2,500 of them, although I think it's probably a few more than that. And this year we ran the largest translocation program that the country's ever seen, taking 222 manu off the Monga and distributing to 3 key projects around the North Island, Capital Kiwi, Tongariro and Taranaki. It's an incredible project. If you haven't been out, you should be out. If you haven't been out, jump onto LinkedIn, find Sanctuary Mountain Maungatautari, and you'll see a post from yesterday where I just sat in the forest for 3 minutes and took a video, and you know the nature in there is incredible. Perhaps where it differentiates itself from any other conservation project, apart from scale, is a lot of people kind of go, well, why would we come here and as opposed to going out to the Waitakaris or any kind of other green belt area in the country? And really for me, it's the forest floor. That's what you see is different. You know, Predator Free 2050 has aspirations that will ultimately remove maybe 2 or 3 predator species in a particular geographical area. Importantly, those projects aren't being funded based on biodiversity outcomes. They're being funded on what kind of in-kind and co-funding there is in a community area. Within the sanctuary, we're able to kind of lay claim to between 12 to 15 pest species removed. We now have the northern enclosure mice-free, Dan? Yes, fabulous. And the southern enclosure's been pest-free for quite some time. The main mountain still has mice on it. That is a battle we've kind of just gone, actually. We're not going to get there. But nonetheless, the forest floor is thriving. Dan is my incredible sanctuary operations manager. He's also our lead kakapo ranger. Most of you will be aware that last year we had the privilege of being able to translocate 10 kakapo from the Southern Islands into the sanctuary. It's the first time in 40 years that kakapo have been on the mainland. It's been a journey, and Dan will talk a bit more about that in a little while. So I'll get you to flick through to the next slide. So within the organisation, we have what we call a funding exoskeleton. It's a complex beast. I've been CEO now for 12 months, and coming into the organisation, perhaps around month 3, I was kind of like, right, let's get my head around where all the money comes from. And you know, it's not easy. We have about 5% of our revenue comes from sponsorship. Organisations such as Mother Earth provide funding into our education program. I'll talk about biodiversity units shortly. Education program brings in revenue annually. Again, a little bit of money comes from the Department of Education. We have a retail space where we sell increasingly merchandising, etc., and a tourism business that we run on the side. The tourism business provides about 19% of our revenue. Last year, that is around $220,000 is the profit that tourism made. That money goes straight back into the sanctuary to run the operations. Donations from wonderful people, around 4%, but 64% of our revenue comes from grants, including the funding that we get from Waikato Regional Council. Waipahu District Council is the other funder, and at the agreement of the setup of the sanctuary, it was agreed in principle between central, regional and local government to provide $300,000 annually. That's been continued and maintained by Waipahu District Council and Waikato Regional Council. DOC's funding program has changed significantly. In 2013, we moved into contestable funding. And in more recent times, a lot of the funding envelopes that were there have essentially dried up for us. So that's been somewhat of a challenge. By way of comparison on the funding envelope, Waikato Regional in the last 4 years have provided $1.4 million to the sanctuary, Waipa District Council $1.4 million. DOC has provided just under $200,000 for baseline funding. So it's a $1.2 million difference. That is significant for us, and it's meant this year has been a journey in trying to ensure that the sanctuary continues. Do you want to jump to the next slide? So I talked before about the tourism side funds, essentially a lot of the work that gets done. This is essentially how the ecosystem works within the trust. So we get funding from operations that can be from any one of those kind of exoskeleton areas. That goes directly into the work that Dan does in the team, which is maintaining the fence area and the pest eradication program. The fence does probably 99.9% of the work for us, although it's a significant amount of work to maintain. However, we still trap pests, and Dan will talk about that shortly. As a result of that, we're able to introduce species and actually manage the whole biodiversity and clean water and everything that comes from that. So I've heard that there's a waterfall on the Manga. I haven't gone and seen it yet, but you know, we have an incredibly pristine environment that's feeding down through all the river systems. From there, science and research happens, and then education can happen. And we run an education program annually that brings in just over 4,000 students. They are ranging in ages from all the way through to kindergarten, all the way through to high school. The most common ones we get around year 9, year 10s. They tend to be the highest numbers that we get in. And then tourism is an area for us that we'd like to grow, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. But you know, at the moment, the tourism team, in terms of just revenue, we pulled in around $450,000 worth of revenue last year through tourism. We see that as a pillar for us going forward, that we need to dramatically increase tourism. We had 20,000 visitors come to the Manga last year. That's the highest ever, but it's always been organic growth. And we now need to act with purpose because we need to double that number and double that number. If I look north of us at a tourism level, Hobbiton brings in around 650,000 people annually. Waitomo in the south of us bring in around 400,000 annually. And we don't want those numbers because it would overlove the area. So we're very clear that, you know, our role as kaitiaki is to ensure that the Manga is nurtured and loved, you know, for centuries to come. This isn't just a 1-year program, it's for centuries. So what we want is around 300 visitors a day as our target. It's 109,200 visitors annually. And that would bring us revenue in of around $2.5 million. And that would change the game for us in funding. It cost us last year $2.1 million to run the sanctuary. So, you know, we're not talking small amounts of money. And so we really, that for us, tourism is the way that we see that we will grow how we do things. And then from there, wonderful funders, yourselves, donors and sponsors also throw money into the kitty, and then we go back around the loop again. And that's essentially how we continue to operate the sanctuary. Flick through to the next slide. So just one of the, I suppose, the key deliverables is that we align ourselves through to the SDGs, and we are looking predominantly life on land as our most consistent one, but obviously clean water, making sure that we've got a quality education program. We're really doing a lot of work over the next 12 months around the good health and wellbeing. We're connecting the Manga to areas of underprivilege and vulnerability within the community. Over the last 12 months, we've had the Department of Corrections come out fairly regularly with parolees to do work on the Manga. We've connected with an organisation in Te Awamutu called Kawaio, and they deal with vulnerable youth. And we're running a 10-week program with them to bring them out to the sanctuary and to go through wellbeing exercises, meditations, healings, those sorts of things. We've had Salvation Army with their drug and alcohol rehabilitation program come out. So we're looking now, we're actually proactively looking to how we can connect with community groups and bring them out to weave in an element of healing and wellbeing. And then obviously climate action, lots of trees. We have lots of trees and an amazing forest floor. So that's us. Let to the next one, and I think I'm handing over to Dan. Dan.
Yeah, kia ora. So as Helen mentioned, we have a dedicated team of rangers. So a team of 7 rangers working full time on the maunga. This number has reduced in the last year. As you understand, there's been some challenges recently, but we remain really dedicated to carrying out the work of maintaining the pest-free status of the maunga. So our team responds to fence call-outs to the fence 24/7. We responded to 108 after-hours call-outs in the past financial year. 13 of those resulted in significant damage to the fence and requiring 8 full sections of the fence to be replaced. So this is work that's really ongoing for our team, and one of our key KPIs, as Helen mentioned, this fence does 99.9% of our work in keeping the maunga pest-free, so it's extremely important to our team and really our main driving piece of work. But of course, the other piece of work that we focus on is maintaining the pest-free status of the maunga. So while the fence does a great job, there are always pest incursions to the mountain. So we had mice detected on 3 occasions in the last financial year, and those sub-enclosures are now once again mouse-free. Rats were detected 11 times and 13 individuals were trapped or poisoned. 8 weasels were trapped on the maunga in the last financial year, and we have also detected possums on the maunga, and that remains an ongoing issue for us. But another important part of this is our partnerships. So one of the ways that our team has been able to expand or support this year is partnership with projects such as Taia Te Taio, the Maunga Tautari Te Parongia Corridor project, and that's been a really positive change for our team, is to be looking outside the maunga more and seeing what work we can do to connect with our community better. Other projects such as Predator Free Cambridge have also been a big benefactor of this, and this is a really positive change for us. Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning that Dan was out driving around sections of the maunga at 1 o'clock this morning, doing the on-call roster. So it's quite a gnarly environment out there. I think perhaps the general public maybe doesn't understand, it can be a dark and stormy night, and there is a breach phone that we have that goes off the moment it can be a pongafrond that touches the fence. So there's essentially what you can see on the left-hand side there is the fence line and what we call the hood. Running along the top of that is a wire, and there's rings that the wire goes through. As soon as one of those wires touches a ring, it sends off a text message to our breach phone to say that there's a problem. Now, that could be anything from what you see kind of in the middle photo, which is a full fence down, through to just a bird's tripped it or a pongafrond's tripped it. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, that requires somebody to go out. So in the middle of the night, from a health and safety perspective, we've got people out on LUVs around the mountain, checking to make sure that it's not a breach. In the last few months, with some pretty gnarly weather, we had 3 fence breaches down within 24 hours. Each fence breach requires a 12-week program of pest monitoring. So we run trap lines about 100 metres either side.
About 200 metres each line goes into the forest. Yeah.
And that goes for a 12-week program. So if you think around, we've got 7 rangers, including Dan. We've got 3 sections of fence down, so that's 2 rangers essentially for each section of fence. And what you see on the second from the left is the reality. I know from a health and safety perspective, somebody standing on top of a tree with a chainsaw probably doesn't look optimal, but it is the reality of what we have to do. Safety for us is an ongoing concern. And when you've got 2 people running tools trying to cut down what could be a 100-year-old or 200-year-old tree and native tree, which are typically quite hard to cut through, it's big work, and the team do big hours just making sure that everything is secure and safe. And then you can see on the right hand side, we were fortunate to get Jobs for Nature funding, which those rangers are no longer funded. So as Dan mentioned, we've gone in my time from a team of 14 down to a team of 7. That's probably the minimum that we can go down to without it becoming a problem. So that's our amazing ranger team. Flick you to the next slide. And so Dan's going to talk about the biodiversity outcomes, which is the gnarly stuff. Grab to the next one.
I'll just keep you to flick to the next slide, please. I'll push on. So the Maunga Tautari is home to a number of native and endemic species on the mountain. 12 native species inhabited the Maunga before the fence was erected, and a further 13 have been translocated to the Maunga following this. There's many species here, too many to list, but perhaps some of the highlights that are well known are things such as North Island brown kiwi, North Island kaka, hihi, mahui nui giant weta, titi pounamu, and of course most recently kakapo. So kaka has been a significant piece of work for our team in the last year, with 6 individuals being released as part of the rehabilitation program. So kaka juveniles that are either bred in captivity or have become injured and released to the Maunga. So that's an ongoing piece of work, is helping with management of the kakapo, North Island kakapo, kaka population. Hihi. Hihi are endangered native species, which have been a struggle for us through the years. They're a very difficult species to have their population grow in great numbers, but we had a really positive survey in the last financial year. 39 hihi were caught, and that's a small increase from the previous year. But most interestingly about that was the number of females has increased, which is a really positive sign for us. So we're happy to see that the population is not declining. Titi pounamu is another one of the more recent translocations, and in our pre-breeding survey that was done in the last year, 16 pairs of Titi pounamu were found, and they're beginning to be sighted further afield on the Maunga. They were released in the southern enclosure, and we're seeing them further and further afield. So that's really positive. They will likely be on about their 3rd generation on the Maunga now, and to see them continuing to increase is really positive.
Helen and Dan, just another couple of minutes.
Yeah.
That's right. I was looking at the time. Going,
Okay, I'll keep it really short. Hodge-Stetis frog, doing great. Mahui nui giant weta survey began this year with support from Manaki Whenua Land Care Research and the Doc Community Fund. And of course, kakapo. 10 kakapo were translocated to the Maunga in the previous year, and you've heard about some of the challenges surrounding kakapo, which has been a big part of my work. Most importantly, I think, is what I try to talk to people about is that this is a trial. The kakapo recovery team face a significant challenge in that the offshore breeding islands where kakapo come from are now at capacity. So they're beginning to look at alternatives, in places like Sanctuary Mountain Maunga Tautari are those one of their best alternatives. So we are learning a lot at Maunga Tautari, and while there has definitely been some significant challenges, this work will carry on because the kakapo recovery team need these sites to work, and this trial will continue into the years to come.
Get you to flick down another couple of slides. That's all good. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. I'll just quickly dart and I mentioned the education program before. I just want to talk about our future. If you go down one more slide. So by 2028, the goal that we've set is to be internationally recognised and nationally cherished. I talk about the fact that the Maunga should be seen in exactly the same light as Tongariro Crossing, as Milford Sound. It should be a place where people come to experience what New Zealand looked like thousands of years ago. And it really is that place. I think the only thing we're missing is Moa, but I don't want any of those there, thank you. Internationally recognised speaks to the science and research community. You know, we want to be able to be seen internationally, that we're a place where people can come and do research and actually learn from what we have. We are so easily accessible for the science community. You don't have to go kind of off island to get to what you need. So we see that as a real opportunity for us. Just flick down one more slide. Yes. So I talked about our exoskeleton. What we see is a change in the way we do things. We expect the baseline of this to be somewhere in the $4 to $5 million mark is what we're targeting as our baseline income, but 30% of that coming from tourism. Biodiversity credits is the last thing that I will leave you with. We went live with ECOS and Profile Group about 3 years ago, releasing biodiversity credits first time in New Zealand. You know, we've been formed by Mavericks, and we continue to have a Maverick mindset of what we can do. At the end of November, early December, we will be releasing what we call the 2024 vintage out to market. It's the first time that we've got a robust registry sitting behind it. That's me done. And what that means for Waikato Regional Council is that due to the funding that you've provided us in the last 12 months, we will be giving you a certificate to say that you've invested in biodiversity outcomes. So it's a way of us raising revenue, but also acknowledging people that fund us. So we'll be looking to around $700,000 in funding from biodiversity credits. That's it. Time off. Questions?
Thank you very much. Gentlemen and those online, any questions? Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, G'day. The tourism, desire to increase tourism, if Hobbiton's got 600,000 and Waitoma's got 250 or whatever it is,
400, yeah.
yeah, how are you going to link in? Because you're actually off the beaten track. How have you got plans to actually
Yes.
reroute tourism?
Yes, we have. So my first plan is that I have recruited the marketing manager from Hamilton and Waikato Tourism. Rebecca Evans has joined the team. It's the first time that we've actually got a head of tourism and will act with purpose. So we're just building the strategy at the moment. We've met with Hobbiton, we've met with Waitomo, and they're really keen to collaborate with us. When you look at it logistically, it is a 15-minute diversion if you are travelling between Hobbiton and Waitomo to come to the Maunga. And so one of the other things we're developing is a 30-minute loop that we could do a 30-minute tour. So essentially 15 minutes diversion, do a 30-minute, 15 minutes back out, and try and work out the time to do that so that people leaving Hobbiton at 11 o'clock and they need to be in Waitomo by 2, how do we snaffle them for an hour, essentially? And those are the logistics that we're trying to work through at the moment. The biggest thing for us, or for me, is we haven't operated in what I call shameless self-promotion. We're invisible. Come into Hamilton and say Sanctuary Mountain Maungatautari, and most people will go, no idea what that is. When you go on to explain what it is, they're like, how did I not know that? That's amazing. So we need to be better at marketing. We need to be better at shameless self-promotion, and the strategy we're working on at the moment to essentially take our 20,000 visitors and double it again, and then grow from there. The best thing for me in doing that, aside from the revenue, is one of the biggest issues we have is the management of resource. So Hobbiton have months of bookings in advance. It actually sits as a liability on their balance sheet. Be a nice problem to have. Waitomo work in weeks of bookings in advance. If we could be at a point of weeks of bookings, it would allow me to smooth the resourcing model that we have, as opposed to having people sitting there being paid and there's nobody, or we don't have enough people. That's the problem we have. So yeah.
Good. You're thinking about it because obviously signage is another issue. Sometimes driving into your place, the roads go this way and it's hard to know where to.
Yeah. Expect to see a lot more of us. You'll get to a point that you'll be sick of us. So yeah.
Second question was just in terms of, I understand we're shifting to yearly funding of our biodiversity rather than 3 yearly. Is that going to have an impact on you, and if so, what?
Look, I think the hardest issue we face is that we need people to commit for a 3 to 5 year period. If I know that I've got the funding locked in for a 3 to 5 year period, it means my focus is on improving the business and growing the business. The last few months, you probably may have noticed that we've suffered a significant funding shortage. It's a huge amount of time to put applications in and then get turned down. So for us, our preference would be to have that locked in continually for that 3 year program, 3 to 4 years, and then we know we've got that there. We then know what our gaps are. So the main issue it causes us to move to annual is not knowing. It's really hard to run a business when you don't know where your revenue is coming from. It also speaks to the importance of this, why we need to transition our operating model. But yeah, so for us, our preference and what we're now actively seeking are sponsors and funders that will commit to a 3 to 5 year program. And if the council were going to go back into a kind of annual plan, then we just want to get our head around the implications of that for us. It will be. It's not optimal, if I'm honest. Preference would be to keep the way we've got it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just on that before Greg speaks to it, I think we have to seriously think about some of the issues. I know this council's been concerned about all the funds available be tied up by previous council, and we basically couldn't release anything for the term. So there's that. but there's also sometimes you have to pick a winner or winners and contra some losers because they don't get. But I think I don't. You want to speak to this, Greg? But we just have to be very careful on our way forward that we don't make it difficult to promote some of the best things around. So that's my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of this council. Okay.
Yeah. So just to clarify, we will still be looking at multi-year applications.
Yeah.
The difference that we have made is that we'll be looking at allocation from the current year that the application was made, as opposed to committing future years of funding. So it's a different way, but we'll still be able to consider multi-year applications.
Yeah, that's good. And look, brutally honest, my goal is that the money that you fund us gets sent out to other organisations. So I would love us to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. That's where we should be. Between biodiversity credits and tourism, we should be able to answer that call. So that's my goal. 5 years is to be in a place where the funding that we receive from district councils, regional councils, and everybody else in the philanthropic community is significantly reduced from where it is. That's what I'm gunning for. So we'll get there.
And the reality is whether this is more of a national discussion because this is our heritage, our past, our future.
Yep.
Before I come to Bruce, Clyde's been online for a while. So Clyde, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me there? Okay.
Yes, that's good. Thank you. Your question, please.
Oh, thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Look, I'm surprised that Kiwi are being translocated to the Tongariro. Can you give me an indication of how many Kiwi have been going over there? Oh, just this last batch, you mentioned 200 odd.
Yeah, sorry, Clyde, I can't give you those exact numbers. As you said, 222 individuals, or as we said, 222 individuals were translocated in the last season. As I understand it, it was a smaller number that went to Tongariro, but I don't have those exact numbers on me, I'm afraid. I can definitely get that to you. Yeah.
Sure, that's okay. I'll follow up on that. And the other thing is, when you translate the birds out, are you monitoring their outcomes? Are you monitoring how they go? Are you just fostering these birds out and you never see them again, and it's sort of like a fostering program rather than adoption, yeah.
So just to understand the process, there is a process that happens iwi to iwi called tono. That is a meeting of the individual iwi groups to collectively agree values, and part of that is around the nurture of the birds. So first of all, there's that. And before anything happens, that has to happen. Then we go through permitting. In the programs that we're sending them to, we're not sending them into pest-free areas. We're sending them into areas that have got predators around, but there is an active predator program in place. We're also sending birds that are a specific weight. So that means that their chances of survival is significantly higher. So we know that juveniles are higher risk. So we don't send any juvenile birds out. These are all birds. We weigh them as we come in, and there are birds that we muster and collect that go back onto the monga that don't go out because of their weight. So we're not monitoring them, Clyde, not ourselves, but the people that are receiving them are monitoring them, and under the auspices of Save the Kiwi as the key partner to all of this, they obviously are testing the outcomes, and we're learning as we go. There is an attitude, which I think is the right one, which is, it's about the species, not necessarily one bird. And obviously nobody wants to see, a fatality of a bird, but we equally not acknowledge that in order to grow the species, we have to make some bold decisions. So that's something that is supported by DOC and supported by Save the Kiwi. And I know that the mortality rates of capital kiwi, which is a new one in the last kind of year or so, have gone very well. So, and there's breeding chicks at the end of last year down in Wellington, which was massive. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'll follow up on those things. And just one other thing, just you mentioned translocating young kaka in to the manga. Now, kaka, they migrate, they travel long distances for food, etc. So these little fellas come in. what do you do to retain the birds? For example, if you wanted kaka, I would have imagined that you would plant trees that are good tucker for kaka, and you could attract them in, because you've got a corridor that goes, right the way through to Great Barrier or Little Barrier, one of those that the kaka fly right through, including the Coromandel, or even Morrinsville. So is there anything you do to retain these young birds, or are you just really just giving them a place to get off to a good start and then leaving them to themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes. So when kaka are released on the maunga, they are supplementary fed and undergo, effectively what's called a soft release. So you're brought into our aviary and held in the aviary for a period before the aviary is opened. But these birds are allowed to return under their own steam, and this gives them the opportunity to basically be introduced to the resident population of kaka on the maunga, and it also teaches these juvenile birds. These birds are taught by the resident population where and how to forage on the maunga, and to gain those skills to forage in the wild. In terms of anchoring them to the maunga, you're absolutely right. Kaka will travel very widely throughout New Zealand, and we've had some great evidence of that. Recently, you mentioned Great Barrier. One of the individuals from Maunga Tautari was tracked to Great Barrier Island. We're fortunate to have a very lush, quite diverse forest, which provides a wide variety of food for them. So while we're fairly confident that the majority of individuals do stay on the maunga and in the area and the surrounding forest fragments, but yes, there will be some individuals who are leaving, and we do what we can to anchor them in that space. But the reality is they're a wild bird, and they will migrate as they see fit. Yeah.
Thanks. What's your name? I've missed it.
Sorry, my name is Dan Howie.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate your work, and all the best. I'll sign off. Thanks.
Thanks, Clyde. Last question to Bruce.
Oh, well, it's partly a comment. I just wanted to thank Helen and Dan for the amazing work that goes on at Maunga Tautari. I do have a bit of a question around the Department of Conservation and their funding. Is that discussion still live, or where have we got to with negotiations? And could we frame it possibly in relation to the kakapo recovery process? And can you give us some sort of understanding on the cost structure? I mean, are those guys really paying full rate for the work that you do to protect kakapo?
So I'll just split that out quickly. On the dock side of life, they've reopened the community fund for another round of funding, so we're going to utilise that as a mechanism to try and get some more funding. And I think the challenge we have with the community fund is focused on recovery of species as opposed to baseline funding. So that the baseline is for us just keeping the fence up, but we'll see what magic we can weave through that. The last contact I had with DOC was mid-August. I haven't heard anything further from them since then. The minister does keep saying to us, you just need to work with DOC, but the reality is that's not really cutting anything towards us at the moment. So let's just say it's an ongoing discussion. We have had the regional director turn up to our board meeting, but really since then we haven't had anything further. So that's the DOC side. And in honesty, I've kind of stopped trying as hard as I was because it's just an exercise in frustration. I have gone down the route of putting an application in through the Lotteries Commission. They're now covering pest management programs. So I'm hopeful that we might get some funding from them. And I call that an elegant solution, how central government can lean into something without actually leaning in. So we'll see how we go with that. In regards to kakapo, the kakapo recovery team, I have to say, are phenomenal. The relationship that we've built with them, and and thanks to Dan for leading that, is exceptional. They fund us. No, they do not fund us the full cost of what it costs us. It's one of the joys of coming into a program midway through. But they do fund us, and they have leaned in over the last few months to try and help in areas, for instance, vegetation trimming. They've thrown money towards us to make sure that happens. Every time we put a vehicle to go and trim the vegetation around the outside of the maunga, we're looking in the vicinity of kind of $25,000 to $30,000. So they've provided some of that funding this year. They fund a kakapo ranger, which was Dan before he went into the sanctuary manager role. So there is funding there. It just doesn't cover all the costs. And I think the challenge that we have is that everyone focuses on the species because the species are sexy, right? Like that's sexy stuff. I can say, I fund kakapo, I fund kiwi. The unsexy stuff is the fence line. And it's really hard to get funding for that. And it's hard to get sponsorship for this program because we're not national. So those corporate sponsors want to be able to sponsor the Kiwi program nationally. They don't want to sponsor 3,363 hectares of old growth native in the middle of the mighty Waikato. So we have hurdles there. But one of the things we're doing is working with the other sanctuaries that are like us and working out what kind of national membership program we could come up with so that that is a little bit more enticing to some of those corporates. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, well, look, that's a great answer. My main comment would be I wouldn't be giving up on DOC.
No, I'm not giving up.
And also there are people around who are happy to help you. If you're going to get into the minister's office, you need to have some allies with you as well.
Yeah,
So
look,
the offer's there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I take that. We've had Tama come out. I hope that might have swayed him, but it didn't. So, and we're also, I appreciate at the moment, we're not the only project in the country that's struggling.
No, that's true, but
yeah,
the kakapo lever is a very significant one,
Yeah,
and
it
if
is.
they're not paying full rate, you've got to use that
Yes.
to the fullest extent.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Cheers.
I've got you. Thank you.
Well, it's great. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting and a great update. So thank you. Most welcome to remain or whatever. So our next presentation is from Thames Coast, Kiwi Care.
Yeah. So moving to the Coromandel Peninsula. So I'd like to welcome Moira Coatsworth, Finn Buchanan, Sheena Beaton, and Joe Inshaw to the table. Thames Coast Kiwi Care. Welcome, team. Yeah, so as said earlier, so we'll plan for 10 minutes, but I'll give you a heads up at 13 to give you a couple minutes to wrap up.
So, sorry, can we just have you push the button on the right-hand side? That's it. So when you've got a red light, we can hear you.
Okay, start again. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Moira Coatsworth, our chair. This is Finn Buchanan, who's our founder and our tech team leader, and Sheena Beaton, our coordinator, and Joe leading the new project. Together they make up our one full-time contract position. So we're very much a volunteer-led organisation. We've been asked to talk about outcomes, and so the outcomes we're profiling today are about Kiwi outcomes, about habitat, and also about people. And you'll see in that slide a range of photos. I also want to acknowledge Ngāti Tamatara, who are our mana whenua, and they're in the lower central picture there at one of our Kiwi releases. All right, moving on. So the map really shows where Kiwi currently are, where the red arrow. If you'd looked at a map in the 1990s when Sid March did a Kiwi survey, you would have seen Kiwi right down to Paeroa, quite a lot around Thames. But as you can see on the western side there, we are the furthest southern group. Finn in 2005, 2006 sounded the alarm that the Kiwi population, even that far north, was on the verge of collapse. Red Admiral Ecology did a survey for us, and there was an estimated 28 Kiwi remaining there. So there was a meeting held in Tapu. The group was only going to get going if there was really strong community support and a project that could be community-led. There was amazing support at that meeting. We've been privileged to have strong tangata whenua support since that time. Landowners and the community swung in behind, and traps started being made. Back then there was 2,000 hectares protected. Since then there's been incremental increase, and we're now protecting 5,000 hectares. So it's very much a community-led, volunteer-driven project. So Kiwi outcomes, the Coromandel has the best Kiwi outcomes nationally with about 4% annual increase, but our project has had 14.5% annual increase. A couple of years ago, the conservative estimate was over 350 birds. So that's a population doubling every 5 years from a local community volunteer project. So we're very proud of that statistic. Moving on. So from small beginnings, there have been over 27,000 predators removed throughout the history. And the mustelid control, that's just a snapshot of the last year. So the big threats to us are ferrets, which can take down kiwi of any size, and stoats, which will take down young kiwi up to about 1 kilogram. We've also got an increase in the feral cat population. So during the first 5 years of our project, the Peninsula project was providing everything except the mustelid control. But since that stopped, there hasn't been adequate habitat protection. We've got now DOC doing 3 yearly 1080 drops in the PCL, but we've got a lot of high value forest outside of the PCL, and we're really wanting to increase the protection there. So Finn's going to talk more about that later. Moving on. So here are our trap lines. We've got 130 kilometres of trap lines that are cleared every fortnight. So I think, Sheena, that's about 1,000 eggs. Is that right? Yeah. 1,000 eggs for a month taken out by our volunteers to do the mahi. But as I've said, all of our mustelid trapping is voluntary and always has been. What's happened as well as that doubling the population every 5 years, if you go to the next slide, we're very excited that the kiwi are also on the move. So in the last 2 years, after 16 or so years of trapping, the landowners in the Tapu Valley now have kiwi moved south into Tapu. So that's quite a challenge when you've got villages and communities living near kiwi territory. So we've done a lot of work around signage and kiwi aversion training for dogs, but we've got strong evidence of the kiwi in Tapu Valley. We know they're moving back, and 4 k's to the north of us is the Mahakiro project, which you also fund. Their last kiwi had stopped calling several years ago, but they've now got a population of, I think, 7 last year. I'm not sure what it is now. So our kiwi are also moving north. In fact, our kaumātua, who released our first kiwi that came down to increase genetic diversity, when he blessed the kiwi, he said, "We want you to go forth and multiply so that the locals are shooing the kiwi out of their vegetable gardens." And one of our landowners told us that on a moonlit night, they heard the screeching and looked out, and sure enough, there was a kiwi calling in their vegetable garden. So our outcomes for kiwi are both increase and expansion. Moving on. Next slide, please. So the funding that you've provided through the Natural Heritage Fund is really allowing a total step change in our project. We're not just focusing on mustelid control now, we're also able to focus on habitat. And we found the AT220s to be innovative, effective, and because they're catching 24/7, actually to be cost effective per catch. So I'm going to hand over to Finn, who's overseeing the project.
Yeah, well, as Moira said, when this project was kicked off, there was the Peninsula project in place. It was doing possum rat control as well as the browsers, the goats and so forth. Since that has stopped, we've still got DOC doing their aerial operation. It was getting out to 4 or 5 years between operations, but they've now committed to a 3 yearly operation. But that still leaves a fair chunk of private land and some pretty nice private native forest that's unprotected. So hence this is enabling us to start building a buffer to protect what DOC are doing and start building on protecting some of that native forest that's on private land. What we've been doing is, so Joe's leading that project on the ground, establishing the traps. He's started doing 5-minute bird counts to see whether we're starting to make a difference to the birds. Because it's in such early stages, we're not really seeing an increase yet. Like these traps have only been on the hill for about a year. But yeah, as you can see, we've killed a heap of possums and a heap of rats. Part of this project is enabling us to look at what next, and it's been a vision of ours for a long time to start not just focusing on kiwi, but maybe we can reintroduce some other forest birds. We had a kōkako ecologist come up at the beginning of this year to do a feasibility study for us to see whether kōkako might be a bird we could look at. The level of effort that would need to go in to create a habitat that would allow kōkako to survive is beyond our capabilities. But what he did say, which was very heartening, we could consider some other bird species that could cope with the level of pest control that we're doing in there. So there'd be tutuai, popokatea, and even maybe titiponamu, so bush robins, whiteheads, and riflemen. But yeah, that's still a wee way down the track. Interestingly, having conversations with our kaumatua, that sort of thing, but particularly those three bird species plus kōkako are very much considered taonga species for them, and so they're wholeheartedly supportive of any efforts of ours to reintroduce those. Maybe next slide. Yeah, so that's a map of our area of operations. The green is dockland. You can see those green dots are where we've currently got AT220s, and we've just taken delivery of another 50 traps. So we're expanding on that. We're working on buffering what dock are flying. Interestingly, the aerial operation is pulled back from the dock boundary. So we're in a situation where we don't want to leave a gap between the private land that we've got these traps on and the aerial operation. So as you can see, some of those traps are having to go into the dockland to provide that better buffer. We really welcome the dock aerial operation in that some of our monitoring, both with cameras and that sort of thing, is as with any project that's focused on using one tool to control a pest. As Dr. Carolyn King once said, that if you use the one tool all the time, evolution works against you. And it's certainly happening with us, where we're ending up with trap-shy stoats. So we're really pleased that DOC are continuing with their aerial operations, because they almost bring the stoat population back to ground zero by taking out those trap-shy stoats. So hopefully any reinfestation of stoats we're dealing with our trapping network. That's us.
One more.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next slide. Oh, well, I'll just finish by saying we've talked about kiwi outcomes. We've talked about wanting to have habitat control, but we're also about outcomes for people. The Thames coast was really hard hit by climate change. People live in a high value environment. They're really conscious of the biodiversity crisis. And so what this project offers for people in terms of making a meaningful difference to both of those things, as people say, is also powerful for them. So outcomes for people are really important. The slide that you can't see just had snapshots of various things people were doing. We've got an Auckland business that come down and do all their staff come and do working bee every year. They carried all the AT220s, and we run environmental programs in the local schools. We've got this over 60 trappers who are giving their time. They give over 5,300 hours a year. So we're talking about a small community that's got 7 kids at the local school, and our project puts in 14.5 hours of volunteer time. So That's really our point of difference. We don't have paid trappers. We've got this huge community engagement to make this project work. And we've also incrementally increased each year. So we're not a project that's come, people have been enthusiastic and then gone. Yes, that was the slide that just, okay.
That's great.
So it's bringing community together and enhancing wellbeing. And I've just got a quote from one of our trappers. We had a trappers workshop on Saturday, and he was talking about the impact on his wellbeing being part of this project. So he said, doing my trap line is never a burden, even when the weather's unfavourable. It combines the things I enjoy, being in the bush, time out from a busy life, protecting our native fauna, and special time shared with my kids and getting genuine exercise. I inevitably head home in a good wellbeing space. So thank you for that. We do have have you got the clip of it? Okay, well, if at some point we could show this slide. We've got we had a trail cam on a burrow with one of our transmitted kiwi while we were doing Operation Nest Egg. And this pretty powerfully shows the kiwi, the adult kiwi, the chicks, but all the predators that come and really harass the kiwi in that space. So hopefully we'll be able to get that clip up at some point.
See it as we can, yeah. Well, just an interesting aside, two of my grandchildren went to a school camp up there a few months ago, and both of them heard kiwi, and one of them saw one, and it was a great thrill to them. So I'm not exactly sure where that school camp is, but it's up there in that area somewhere. So any questions? Warren?
Awesome. Hey, yeah, thanks guys, and Maura, just really impressed with the way you're involving the community and everything like that, and it definitely sort of, I think, it builds. So once you've got people getting involved, then more people get involved and stuff like that. So you're doing fantastic in that space. Also, just a comment around, I'm sure that bird life starts to improve with all those pests you're taking out of the bush and that sort of thing. It's always something harder to sort of see that result quickly. It's something that comes with time. So fantastic there. And just a question around the resource of the possum. Are you doing anything with that? Obviously, there's 2,500 dead possums. There's a fair bit of fur and stuff and sitting there. I just wondered if any of that was utilised. But yeah, push a button. Yeah.
So one of the best things about high possum catch numbers is it actually brings more possum in, and I guess the hard bit is it'd be far too difficult to extract these possum from some of the areas where we go. You know, you're not getting any vehicle into some of these areas to get these possum out. So the fact that you saw the slide where the possum are laid at the bottom of the ramp that have been struck, you only leave them in situ for the purpose of attracting bats and everything else that comes across it.
Okay, we've got Clyde. We've also got the video which can go up on this screen, which they can't. Well, we're apparently trying to get it on this screen, which those online won't be able to see. But in the meantime, Clyde, you've got a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just guys, with regard to the Department of Conservation's pending aerial operation, are you getting a buffer? Is your area being buffered from the aerial operation? Is that what I heard? Got a bad line.
Yeah, so with the aerial operation, over the dockland, the traps that we're deploying we're trying to get alongside the aerial operation to create that buffer and build, and start trusting reintroduction of the unprotected private forest back into the dock estate where the aerial operation is happening.
Yeah, sorry, Finn. Look, I was just dropping
that the aerial operations moved back from that boundary.
Okay, so thank you, Noel. And so
sorry, Clyde. From what I understood, there was the
line's really bad. But look, if you can just hear me, I just wonder if you've requested to be included in the operation.
Yes, we have. And what's ended up happening is that within our project areas, the Timatanga Forestry, which is owned by Pointer Investments, we managed to negotiate with EcoFX and DOC, who did the operation, to at least on their boundary come right to the DOC boundary with Timatanga Forestry. So, and I think in future, what we would like to see is that maybe Thames Coast Kiwi Care can act as a bit of a broker between WRC and DOC to get a more cohesive operation happening, rather than it all being disparate, so that maybe we can actually protect a larger area and protect some of those pretty special blocks of native forest that are actually in private ownership and within our trapping area.
Just as a follow-up to that, we would really welcome a visit. We could show you the the pretty special forest there is, but also just what the impact is on the areas that are not protected. So you'd be very welcome to visit.
Yep. Thank you for that, and I'll consider that. I'm familiar with some of the forests up that way. Been filming it over the years, but thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just an observation. I just wanted to first of all thank these guys for all the work that they're doing. That's fantastic. But in terms of our Natural Heritage Partnership Fund, this is the point of the complementarity between the Department of Conservation doing their regular, every 3-year pest control, and you guys focusing and covering off all of that private land. This is the point for the regional council. This is what our fund is designed for, and I just wanted to point that out. That if we can get this level of complementarity with every one of our projects, we would be in a way better state. And the notion that Finn just outlined of how they can assist in the brokering of the relationships with local and other industry on the Coromandel. This is exactly what we want. Thank you. Thank you.
Rose, a case in point here is the trap line that I do in the Tapu Valley. It's all on private land, and it used to be completely goat free. In the last 3 or 4 months, I've noticed there's a mob of goats that turned up. They've come out of the forest park. I've talked to Doc about getting onto those, and I didn't get much of a response. I then happened in another role where I was actually certifying the dogs of the contractor who does the work on the dock land. I said, well, could you get up there and deal with these goats? And he said, well, they're on private land. I'm only paid to work on the dock land. And so, yeah, it would have been wonderful if we could have got, while the hunters were there, to get that mob of goats dealt with at the same time.
Thank you. Wonderful. Ben. Oh, well, we just want to close this one off. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming on. It's enlightening for those of us who are fairly new to this biosecurity, biodiversity area. It's absolutely enlightening, and it's great that the community gets off its butt and does things for itself, because councils can't be all things to all people all of the time. And just the leverage that you get and the attraction of this sort of work to the community is just amazing all over the country. So just take my hat off to you people working as you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think we'll take a break to see if we can get the IT 20 minutes, I'm told. Thank you. We'll adjourn. Yep. So morning tea will be through in the next room.
Yes.
In the Ko-Fi room?
Yes.
Yes. If someone could lead the way through for them, please.